I want to talk about the vaccine because the vaccine is on a lot of people's minds. It's on a lot of people's, are conflicted about it. There's a lot of unbelievable debates and interfamily hatred that I've seen where families are not talking to each other about this vaccine. Should you take it? Shouldn't you take it? And so, the other day, yesterday, at about 6 p.m., I looked like the guy from Hellraiser. Did you ever see Hellraiser? I never saw it either.
I don't know.
But when I was a kid, I remember the poster of the movie Hellraiser, and it gave me such trauma just looking at the poster. I'm like, if I can't look at the poster, I cannot watch that movie. But it stayed with me. It's this dude that has pins sticking out of his face. It's like a supernatural demon, Freddy Krueger-like guy with pins all over his body and his face.
You looked like that?
I looked like that because I went to acupuncture yesterday. And pins were put in my nose, in my forehead, all over my body. Unpleasant experience. Why? Because I'm suffering from significant post-COVID, I can't even think of the word. Why? Because I have COVID fuzzy brain. That's one of the things.
Dude, you've always had fuzzy brain.
That's true. That's true. So you exacerbate that. You multiply that. So I have headaches and fatigue. And even more than that is this dizziness. I'm dizzy constantly. I was driving there, and it's like a one-lane thing. I'm seeing 3 lanes.
No way.
So I'm just picking the middle lane.
Oh, my God. That's crazy.
Not that bad. But there were times I was like, this is not perfectly safe. I'm like so dizzy. And so I'll tell you, I was skeptical of the vaccine. I know it's dangerous to even bring this up because half of our listeners may hate it. Half of our listeners may love it. Nobody's like really ambivalent to it. And what I want to share is actually a call to humility about the whole thing, because I was skeptical about it, I think justifiably so. But before I even had a chance to decide whether I would take it or not, I was already in quarantine from Shayna when the invitation came that I could get the vaccine if I wanted to. And they don't let you get the vaccine when you're in quarantine because you may have it. They want you to wait till you're out of quarantine. So by the time that quarantine ended, I actually had corona. So I couldn't really make that decision for myself. But I was leaning away from it just because of all the reports and all the skepticism, and it's messing with your RNA, and it's this man-made thing, and I don't know. But then I got it, and it was quite unpleasant, and the dizziness and the heart palpitations and the fatigue. So then I started being like, you know what? It's like either you're going to gamble for the virus or for the vaccine.
A Chinese-made virus that was made to hurt, or an American-made vaccine that was made to help? Is that what you were going to say?
That is possibly something that could be said. There's so much. I want to focus on what the point is.
Because no one knows if it's a Chinese-made virus
Nobody
or not.
knows if it was made in a lab or not. I don't want to lose the point on where things were manufactured.
Well, most of the debates are really about intentions. Is this a tyrannical intention of trying to hurt mass people in the population to control the world in order to stop people having children? Like, a lot of the fears are about the intentions behind the vaccine.
Okay.
Or behind the virus.
To me, it's not super relevant as far as the actual physiological effects of the virus, of whether it was intentionally released from a lab, accidentally released from a lab, or it was just from a wet market that someone ate a bat. I don't know which one it was, and that's not exactly relevant right now. For me, the issue is it's either the virus or the vaccine.
Well, if
and
it was,
I look around.
It is relevant because if it was a weaponized virus that was made in a biolab in order to hurt people in some cases where maybe it just got out or maybe it was let out, then that's something very different than just something that's sort of like mutated in a wet market, I think.
Who knows? Maybe the mutation would be worse than the engineered virus.
That's also true.
So I don't know. But the point is that I had such a negative following. Meanwhile, I'm looking at my friends and my family. This is like, it's very...
Anecdotal.
Anecdotal. Yes, that's the word I was looking for. But at the same time, I look at you, I look at friends, I look at family that have been vaccinated, and they have a little bit of a headache, a little bit of something for 24 hours after the second shot, and then they're good. And the statistics coming out are really good for this vaccine. So I'm leaning a little bit more towards the vaccine now. But here's the thing. I'm seeing people online posting on Facebook. Someone put a golden calf, had all the Jews bowing to the golden calf, and it said vaccine. And these people are saying if you get the vaccine, you don't have emunah. You don't have faith in God because you're getting this vaccine and you're putting your faith in the vaccine. We're all putting our faith in the vaccine, and now we're not putting our faith in God. Okay, so that's one perspective. The other perspective, I just heard the other night from a friend of mine. He said, these people that are not getting the vaccine, do they have no emunah? Do they have no faith? And I was like, tell me what you mean. He said, Israel, out of all the countries in the world, Israel is the nation that has gotten by far the most percentage, the most vaccines, the most percentage per capita vaccine. Do you think that Hashem would bless us in this way, would have this overwhelming vaccine wave just for the Jewish people and have it be something destructive and toxic and poisonous to kill us? If Hashem had us get it first, we can imagine that, well, it's a good thing. Okay, so now these people are saying you don't have faith if you get it, and you don't have faith if you don't get it. And I think that there just needs to be a certain amount of humility about it because we just don't know. We don't know the long-term effect of the vaccine. So people who believe in getting it should get it. People who don't believe in getting it shouldn't get it. But to argue and advocate, because the loudest story about this vaccine was this poor woman, Ben Shitri, 32-year-old mother of 6. She was pregnant. Her brother-in-law had one of the biggest Facebook groups against the vaccine, and then she got the virus, and she died, and the baby died. And then he took down the Facebook group and said, you know what, when it hits you personally, I don't know. And so he was like humbled by it. At least he took it down and he didn't double down, because I imagine it's quite painful to take the group down and implicitly admit that you had possibly something to do with your sister-in-law and the baby dying, and now these kids are orphans. But so he took it down, and that's the point. Like, we don't know. I think that the advocacy and the fierceness on both sides, there needs to be a little bit more live and let live about the whole thing. Do you hear what I'm saying?
Yeah, definitely. I just want to talk about the emunah side of this, because to me, the fact that Corona started on Purim, and now it's come full circle 1 year later, and we're back on Purim, and now Israel is officially starting to get out of this sort of economic turmoil because of the vaccine, meaning they're starting to now give out these green passports, and they're going to open up the theaters, and they're going to open up gyms, and they're going to open up public transportation, and they're like reopening the world now right at Purim also. You can't help but look at Purim and look at the vaccine and look at Corona and not see that they're absolutely intertwined. And what is the custom of Purim that everyone knows? The custom that everyone knows is everyone dresses up in costumes and masks. And the underlying message there is saying, like, don't look at the world at just the veil. Don't look at the mask. Don't look at the shallow side of the outside. There is something that's going on underneath the mask of nature. There's something that's going on underneath the mask of the vaccine or of the coronavirus. That is so obviously the message that's being shouted out on Purim. And people that get the vaccine, it's not 100%. Maybe you have like 90, 95%. Sort of immunity, and then people that get COVID, I know people that got Corona and they just kind of got it and then they got over it and nothing happened to them, and then there's people that got Corona and then they died, and it's like all probabilities.
Yeah, my sister accidentally gave it to us. She was nearly totally asymptomatic, and then she got this rosacea, this thing on her face, some sort of a rash, and I'm having this, and different people have totally radically different responses to the whole thing. But I think that the point for me is that if you said don't look at the mask, I think it's worth looking at the mask to understand, because something is also being conveyed through the mask, but we don't necessarily know. I think here's the thing. Esther's second feast. I heard you share a beautiful teaching about why she did the first feast and then the second feast before she, outed Haman to kill Haman, right? Interesting thing. I'd love for you to share that. But Rav Biederman shared an interesting idea about why she did the first feast and then the second feast that's different than yours. They could both be true. But she wanted the entire Jewish people to see that she threw this feast for Haman, and that he came and there was a wonderful banquet, and then he left, and then the Jewish people were like, is Esther selling us out? Is she now cozying up to Haman in hopes of saving herself? We can't put our faith in Esther anymore. There's nowhere left for us to put our faith. We have to put our faith in God. And so she wanted to do that to give the illusion to the Jewish people that she actually sold them out in order to force them to put their faith in God, which is the only thing that's really going to rectify the situation, which is an interesting take on it. That's the thing. If you take the vaccine, then take it with understanding that Hashem sent it, and you ask for Hashem's blessing in taking the vaccine, that you should emerge okay. And if you don't take the vaccine, then also do that in a faithful way. But I don't think it's to be castigating people, there's this desire, this thirst for surety, for knowing everything. And the bottom line is we don't. We just don't know everything. So there just has to be, I think, a general dose of humility and of compassion and of love, not only when it comes to the vaccine, but when it comes to everything. I look at the vitriol in America, this whole race thing, the cancellation culture. It's so overwhelming that it seems like there's no love left. So you can't legislate those good feelings of love and compassion. And I don't think that you can actually nurture them if you don't recognize that there's a common source that we're all from, that we're all children of the one God of Israel, that we're all children of God, every single human being. If that's one thing that I really could with surety take from this vaccine, it's that did in some level unite the whole world. It should have united the whole world even more, to recognize that from Iran to Israel to China to Russia, we're all human beings that got hit with this vaccine and no one is immune from it. We're all the same biological creatures. We're all children of God. It should have been something that brings us all together. And in some countries it is, and in some countries it's not. And I look at America, and I'm sorry to constantly be bringing it back to America, but there is so much confusion and hatred and divisiveness and polarization in American society that I just can't imagine anything good happening there anytime soon. It just seems so overwhelming. Do you?
I do agree, but I just want to talk about two aspects that you brought up before. That those that take the vaccine, so they have, according to the stats now, there's been 4 million Israelis that have taken the vaccine, and it seems as though it's 95% effective. But that means that it's 5% ineffective. And then there's people that get corona, and then there's a certain percentage that die. There's a certain percentage that have side effects, long-term side effects, short-term side effects, and there's a certain percentage that are just asymptomatic. So any way you spin it, it's just a matter of probabilities. And then once again, we're like right back to probabilities and chance and Pur. I mean, it's right back to the idea of Purim. And so what about this thesis? That for someone, they might respond better to the vaccine than they would to corona. Another person may really respond well to corona, but terrible to the vaccine. It actually might be a tailored thing for each person individually, that there isn't necessarily like a blanket statement that could say anti-vax, pro-vax. Maybe it's like an own person's journey that's going to have to bring him to the conclusion of where he goes. But as he does it, no one can be confident that, all right, my immune system is going to fight corona, or, oh, thank God I got the vaccine, because you're still susceptible to something. There is still has to be an underlying faith. And the more that I've been meditating about this, that there's an idea that is called emunah, which is just believing in God. But then there's an idea of bitachon, which means to trust in God. That's usually how it's translated. And what does it mean?
The internalization of faith.
It's like an internalization. It's a certain courage that you're saying, well, if I believe in God, then I'm ready to take this action because I'm trusting in God that he's going to be okay with me. And I was thinking, well, that's pretty amazing. If you think about going out to war, there's a law in the Rambam that says if you are scared of going out to battle, you're not allowed to go out to that mission. And so there were a few times I remember where you and I were going out and I started getting a little bit nervous. You know, as you can imagine now, I had like 4 kids at the time and we're like going out to a mission where we're maybe going to encounter the Hamas. And I'm like thinking about my children, thinking about my wife, and I start getting scared. And I remember the halacha, like, Jeremy, you're not allowed to go out scared. And so I would have to kind of like psych myself out and just get ready to go out to battle, that I'm not like nervous to encounter the Hamas, but I'm proactively looking for the terrorist that wants to seek harm against the Jewish people.
You have to want to be there.
Yeah, obviously that makes you a better soldier. You're more focused. You're more aware. You're like proactively going out. And I was thinking, you know what? That actually might be a truth also on an internal level. That if you take the vaccine or don't take the vaccine, perhaps the more bitachon that you have in Hashem, the more bitachon you would have from corona. Meaning, what does bitachon actually mean? It doesn't mean trust. It means security. It's like, I'm just secure in God. But that sort of existential posture, that trusting that God is going to be with you, confident that this way or that way you're going to be okay, has to help your immune system actually be ready to go out to battle. And I think that there's a certain, like, people that are just like paralyzed with fear. They're paralyzed with fear about the vaccine. Tehillah, for about 2 months, was just paralyzed. Get the vaccine. Don't get the vaccine. Should I get the vaccine? Shouldn't I? Corona. The kids just paralyzed.
And I think it's also added to that is that she's like a genius. So she delved into both sides of it.
Oh, that's
and
why
there's
she was
an argument
paralyzed.
on both sides.
That's the whole thing, is that there's an argument for there and there's an argument for there. And at the end, it's all a Pur. In the end, it's all chance. It's all just probabilities. So you just don't know. So then what do we have, though? We do have emunah. And you can take the vaccine with emunah and bitachon. And you can try to go the natural route, be'emunah ve'bitachon. But I think that like underneath the mask of the vaccine or not the vaccine needs to be Emunah and
And
bitachon.
emunah and bitachon. That's exactly
And the more bitachon that you have, the more bitachon you have.
And not only that, because lack of bitachon, lack of faith, that fear actually isn't just an abstract spiritual reality. It causes the release of cortisol. It causes the release of...
It
weakens your immune system, and it really releases toxins into your immune system.
Well, here's the other thing, meaning like the people that are saying that if you take the vaccine, you don't have emunah, and there's a golden calf, the vaccine of the golden calf of the generation. I really despise that reality because I imagine that those persons have taken Advil, they've taken herbs, if they've taken, I don't know, any type of medicine or any type of medical advice on anything. Have they never taken, because if they've ever taken any type of medical advancements, whether it be natural, maybe chemotherapy, would it be Advil, would it be penicillin, whatever it might be, then that's no, you should have just had faith.
I would say that the golden calf.
That's ridiculous.
The golden calf little image that I saw, so it said vaccine on the golden calf. Other people would say not vaccine, but I think that your word should say knowing anything for sure. That's the golden calf, is thinking that you know, thinking that you're in control.